If there is one thing I have learned in my 33 years on this earth, it is that there are two arenas in life where you must always keep a knife hidden in your boot: corporate America and family gatherings. For a long time, I mistakenly believed that these two battlegrounds were separate. I thought the ruthless, cutthroat strategies I employed as the director of strategic partnerships at a top-tier firm in Chicago were entirely distinct from the polite, passive-aggressive maneuvering required at my husband's family Thanksgiving dinners. I was wrong. The moment those two worlds collided, it created a blast radius that nearly wiped out everything I had spent a decade building. But I am not the kind of woman who goes down without a fight. I am the kind of woman who builds a bomb of my own and hands the detonator to the enemy. To fully understand the sheer audacity of what my sister-in-law attempted, you need to understand exactly what was at stake. I had been with Apex Global Innovations for 8 years. I didn't just climb the corporate ladder. I practically built it, rung by rung, out of sheer grit, countless sleepless nights, and an uncanny ability to close deals that other executives deemed impossible. I am fiercely smart, fiercely driven, and unapologetically ambitious. By the time I was 32, I was managing a portfolio worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I was the golden child of the executive floor, the rainmaker, the one our CEO, an uncompromising visionary named Marcus, relied on when the chips were down. My trajectory was clear. The current vice president of operations was retiring at the end of the fiscal year, and that corner office had my name written all over it in invisible, yet undeniable, ink. It wasn't just a promotion. It was the culmination of my life's work, and then I got pregnant. My husband, David, and I were thrilled. We had been trying for 2 years, and the news was a massive blessing. But in the corporate world, a pregnancy can be a vulnerability. It is a biological reality that requires time away from the chessboard, and when you step away from the chessboard, someone else is always waiting to move your pieces. I knew this. I prepared for it. I structured my accounts meticulously, delegating tasks to my most trusted junior executives, creating foolproof transition documents, and ensuring that my temporary absence would be nothing more than a minor blip on the company's radar. I planned a strict 12-week maternity leave. I was going to have my baby, bond with him, and then march right back into the firm to claim my VP title. Enter Chloe. Chloe is married to David's younger brother, Mark. She is 28, possesses the kind of aggressive, manicured beauty that requires a trust fund to maintain, and has a blinding sense of entitlement. 3 years ago, Mark came to David, practically begging us to help Chloe find a job. She had been bouncing from one mediocre marketing gig to another, always complaining that her talents were unappreciated. Against my better judgment, but out of a sense of familial duty, I pulled some strings and got her a foot in the door at Apex as a junior account manager in a completely different department. I assumed that would be the end of it. I assumed she would stay in her lane, do her job, and collect her paycheck. I vastly underestimated her ambition, and I vastly underestimated her resentment toward me. Chloe always had a chip on her shoulder about my success. At family dinners, she would make snide, backhanded comments about my career. "It must be so exhausting, Alina, pretending to be a man all day," she would purr over a glass of Pinot Noir. Or, "I just don't know how you can prioritize money over a balanced life. Mark and I value experiences." I usually just smiled and let the comments slide off me like water off a duck's back. I didn't care what Chloe thought. I was a director, she was a junior manager. We were not in the same league. But when my pregnancy became public knowledge, Chloe's demeanor shifted. She started showing up on my floor at the office. She started asking questions about my accounts, ostensibly to learn from the best. She offered to take some things off my plate as I got closer to my due date. I politely declined, keeping her at arm's length. I knew a vulture circling a supposedly dying animal when I saw one. When I was 38 weeks pregnant, my water broke right in the middle of a third-quarter projection meeting. I calmly excused myself, walked to my car, called David, and drove to the hospital. 10 hours later, we welcomed our beautiful son, Leo, into the world. Holding him was a profound, earth-shattering experience. For the first few weeks, I was completely absorbed in the agonizing, beautiful chaos of a newborn. I didn't check my work email. I didn't look at a single spreadsheet. I trusted the systems I had put in place. I trusted my team. I should not have trusted Chloe. The first crack in the foundation appeared during week 4 of my maternity leave. I was sitting in the nursery, nursing Leo, existing in that hazy, sleep-deprived bubble, when my personal cell phone buzzed. It was Sarah. Sarah was a senior analyst on my team, a brilliant, no-nonsense woman who I had mentored for the past 3 years. She was fiercely loyal to me, and I to her. "Elena," Sarah said, her voice tight, hushed and thrumming with nervous energy. "I am so sorry to bother you. I know you said no work calls, but something is happening and you need to know about it." A cold spike of adrenaline pierced through my postpartum fog. "What is it, Sarah? Tell me." "It's Chloe," Sarah said. "She managed to get herself temporarily reassigned to our department to help cover the overflow while you're away. The VP of HR approved it last week. And Elena, she's making a play for your clients and your job." I let out a harsh, incredulous laugh. "Chloe, she doesn't have the clearance or the expertise to handle my Tier 1 accounts. They would eat her alive." "That's just it," Sarah continued, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper. "She's not managing them. She's schmoozing them. She's been taking the reps from Vanguard Tech and Horizon Group out to expensive lunches. And worse, Elena, she's spreading rumors." My grip on the phone tightened. "What kind of rumors?" Sarah hesitated. "She's telling everyone, from the junior staff all the way up to the executive floor, that you aren't coming back. She's saying that postpartum depression hit you hard, that you've realized you can't balance motherhood with an executive role, and that you're quietly planning to resign and become a stay-at-home mom. She's framing herself as the savior stepping in to catch the balls you dropped." The silence in the nursery was deafening. I looked down at Leo, sleeping peacefully against my chest, and felt a surge of maternal, primal rage, instantly followed by a cold, calculating corporate fury. Chloe wasn't just trying to climb the ladder, she was trying to saw off the rung I was standing on. "Has Marcus heard these rumors?" I asked, my voice terrifyingly calm. Marcus, the CEO, despised instability. If he thought I was jumping ship, he would immediately start looking for my replacement for the VP role to ensure continuity. "I don't know," Sarah admitted, "but she's been CCing him on all her update emails regarding your accounts. She's taking credit for the groundwork you laid months ago. She literally closed the secondary deal with Horizon yesterday, the one you spent 6 months negotiating, and she paraded around the office acting like she pulled it out of thin air. Elena, the VP promotion interviews are in a month. She's trying to position herself as the natural successor." "Thank you, Sarah," I said. "Don't say a word to anyone, let her keep thinking she's winning. I'll handle it." I hung up the phone. The sleep deprivation evaporated, replaced by a crystalline, razor-sharp focus. I gently placed Leo in his crib, walked out to the living room, and opened my laptop. I had intentionally left my remote server access active. For the next 4 hours, while my baby slept, I went hunting. What I found made my blood boil. Sarah hadn't been exaggerating. If anything, she had understated the situation. Chloe had woven a masterful, insidious web of corporate sabotage. I found emails to my top clients, draped in faux concern. "Elena is taking extended time to focus on her growing family, and we fully support her decision to step back from the demanding pace of this industry," she had written to the CEO of Vanguard Tech. "In the meantime, I will be taking over as your primary point of contact to ensure no disruption in our aggressive growth strategy." It was brilliant in its toxicity. She wasn't outwardly attacking me, she was weaponizing my motherhood. She was using society's inherent biases against working mothers to systematically dismantle my professional reputation, painting me as a stressed-out, overwhelmed cliché who had tapped out of the race. I showed the emails to David when he got home. He read them, his face turning an alarming shade of red. "I am going to call Mark," he growled, reaching for his phone. "I am going to tell him his wife is a sociopath." "No," I said, putting my hand over his. "You are not going to do anything. If you call Mark, he tells Chloe. If Chloe knows I'm onto her, she changes her strategy and plays the victim. This is my career, David. My battlefield. I am going to bury her, and I am going to do it so thoroughly that she will never work in this industry again." David looked at the fire in my eyes, slowly put his phone down, and nodded. "What's the plan?" "I'm going back to work," I said, 2 weeks early, "but nobody is going to know until the trap snaps shut." The next week was a blur of frantic, covert planning. I couldn't just walk into HR and file a complaint. Chloe was cunning. She would claim she was just covering for me and that her words were misinterpreted. Corporate HR departments are notoriously risk-averse. They would launch an internal investigation. The waters would get muddied, the drama would leak, and Marcus, who abhorred office politics, might decide that both of us were too much of a liability for the VP role. No, I needed to catch her red-handed. I needed to let her dig her own grave, jump in, and then I would just happen to be the one driving the backhoe that filled it with dirt. I needed a grand stage, high stakes, and an audience that mattered. I needed a fake $1 million client. Enter Julian. Julian was David's old college roommate. They had played rugby together and remained close. Julian was brilliant, charismatic, and had made a small fortune running a boutique software development firm in Seattle. Crucially, he had never met Chloe, he had never been to an Apex company function, and he possessed the swagger of a high-rolling tech billionaire. I called Julian and laid out the situation. He laughed for a solid minute before saying, "Elena, I would be honored to play a part in destroying your sister-in-law. Tell me what to wear and who I'm pretending to be." We created Ethelgard Holdings, a fictitious, massively wealthy venture capital firm supposedly looking to inject $40 million into the logistics sector, Apex's primary specialty. I used my personal funds to buy a highly realistic domain name, set up a sleek minimalist landing page that looked like $1 million, and routed a fake corporate phone number to Julian's cell phone. Now, I needed to set the bait. I used my remote access to log into the company's CRM system late one night. I created a high-priority, heavily restricted lead file for Ethelgard Holdings. I populated it with dummy data that indicated a massive, impending contract. And then, I purposefully left a digital breadcrumb. I bypassed the standard assignment protocols and accidentally CC'd the generic departmental overflow inbox, the exact inbox Chloe was currently monitoring, on an introductory email draft to Julian's fake persona. It was a gamble, but I knew Chloe's greed. I knew she was scouring the system for any scrap of leverage she could find. 2 days later, Sarah called me. "You aren't going to believe this," she whispered from a stairwell. "Chloe is running around the office like a chicken with its head cut off. She claims she generated a massive inbound lead from a VC firm called Ethelgard Holdings. She's scheduled a preliminary pitch meeting for next Thursday. She's telling everyone this is the deal that's going to secure her the VP spot." I smiled, rocking Leo in my arms. Perfect. Thursday is the day I officially return from maternity leave. 2 weeks early. The final piece of the puzzle was Marcus. I could not execute this without the CEO in the room, but I couldn't tell him it was a setup beforehand. He was a busy man. He wouldn't participate in an elaborate sting operation. He needed to be a captive audience. On Wednesday night, the evening before the trap was set to spring, I sent a highly encrypted, confidential email directly to Marcus. "Marcus, I am cutting my maternity leave short. I will be returning to the office tomorrow morning. During my absence, severe, actionable breaches of protocol and client misrepresentation have occurred within my department. I have the digital footprint to prove it, but the most critical evidence will present itself tomorrow at 10 a.m. during the Ethelgard Holdings pitch. I am requesting 30 minutes of your time, in strict confidence, starting at 9:45 a.m. I will meet you in the adjoining observation room, next to conference room B. Do not alert anyone to my return. Best." Elena, conference room B was the crown jewel of the Apex executive floor. It was a massive, glass-walled boardroom designed to intimidate clients. Attached to it, however, was a smaller, private observation suite, separated by a pane of one-way acoustic glass. It was technically designed for training purposes, allowing senior executives to silently observe junior associates giving pitches without interfering. It was rarely used. It was the perfect blind. Thursday morning arrived. I kissed David and Leo goodbye, feeling a potent mixture of anxiety and sheer, unadulterated adrenaline. I wore my sharpest tailored suit, the dark navy one that made me look like an armor-clad knight ready for a corporate crusade. My heels clicked with lethal precision on the concrete floor of the parking garage. I bypassed the main lobby entirely, using my executive keycard to enter through the private freight elevator, bypassing the reception desk and the gossip mill. I slipped into the observation room at exactly 9:40 a.m. The lights were off. Through the one-way glass, I had a perfect view of conference room B. The table was polished to a mirror shine. A catered breakfast of artisanal pastries and expensive coffee was laid out. At 9:45 a.m., the door to the observation room opened silently. Marcus stepped in. He was a tall, imposing man in his late 50s, with silver hair and a gaze that could cut through solid steel. He looked at me, his expression unreadable. "Alina," he said softly, "you look well. Congratulations on the boy. Now, what is this cloak and dagger nonsense? What is going on?" I handed him a manila folder. "Marcus, while I have been recovering from childbirth, Chloe, my sister-in-law, whom HR inexplicably allowed to cover my overflow, has been systematically contacting my top-tier clients, taking credit for my closed deals, and spreading aggressive rumors that I am resigning due to a mental breakdown." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Those are severe allegations, Alina. If she has been misrepresenting the stability of our executive team to clients like Vanguard, that is grounds for immediate termination. But I need proof, not just family drama." "I know," I said, gesturing to the glass. "That is why you are here. The man she is pitching in 5 minutes is not a VC billionaire. He is an actor I hired. Ethelgard Holdings does not exist. I set a trap to see if she would attempt to steal a multi-million-dollar account using my proprietary data, and to see exactly what she is willing to say about me to a prospective client to secure her own advancement. Just watch and listen." Marcus looked from me to the empty boardroom, and then back to me. A faint, almost imperceptible smirk touched his lips. He crossed his arms and leaned against the back wall. "I've always admired your ruthlessness, Alina. Proceed." At 9:55 a.m., Chloe strutted into conference room B. She looked immaculate, wearing a white designer suit that screamed new money. She began arranging her presentation materials, practically vibrating with nervous excitement. She thought she was about to land the whale that would make her career. At exactly 10 o'clock a.m., the receptionist escorted Julian into the room. Julian was magnificent. He was wearing a custom-tailored charcoal suit, an expensive watch, and possessed an aura of effortless arrogance that commanded the room immediately. Chloe practically tripped over herself to shake his hand. "Mr. Vance, welcome to Apex Global Innovations. I am Chloe, the Senior Account Executive handling your portfolio." Senior Account Executive, she had already promoted herself. I glanced at Marcus, his eyes narrowed slightly. I flipped the switch on the intercom panel, piping the audio from the boardroom directly into our observation room. "Please, call me Julian," he said smoothly, taking a seat at the head of the table. "I appreciate you putting this together on such short notice, Chloe. As I mentioned in my email, Ethelgard is looking to move aggressively. We need a firm that is stable, agile, and has top-tier leadership. I was doing some preliminary research, and I saw a woman named Alina was listed as the Director of Strategic Partnerships. Will she be joining us?" The trap was baited, the hook was dangling. Chloe let out a soft, patronizing sigh, a perfectly practiced sound of fake sympathy. "Ah, Alina. Yes. Well, Julian, to be completely transparent with you, and we value absolute transparency here at Apex, Alina is no longer heavily involved in the day-to-day operations of the firm." "Oh," Julian said, raising an eyebrow. "Her track record looked phenomenal. I was looking forward to working with her." "Between us," Chloe said, leaning in conspiratorially, lowering her voice in a way that amplified perfectly through the hidden microphones, "Alina had a very difficult time transitioning to motherhood. She just had a baby, and unfortunately, the postpartum period hit her incredibly hard. She had a bit of a mental collapse, to be frank. The stress of the executive lifestyle combined with a newborn was simply too much for her to handle." In the observation room, I felt my fingernails digging into my palms. It was one thing to read about her lies. It was another to hear her say them out loud, weaponizing my life's greatest joy against me. That's unfortunate, Julian said, playing his part flawlessly. So she's resigning. Quietly, yes, Chloe nodded eagerly, weaving her noose tighter with every word. It's a tragedy, really, but she came to me in tears right before she left, begging me to take over her portfolio. She knew she couldn't give clients like you the attention you deserve. She realized her place was at home, not in the boardroom. That's why the executive team has fast-tracked me for the vice president of operations role. They needed someone young, hungry, and unburdened by domestic distractions to lead the firm into the future. You will be dealing exclusively with me, Julian. And I can assure you, I don't drop the ball. Silence hung in the observation room. The sheer, pathological nature of her lie was breathtaking. She hadn't just exaggerated. She had fabricated an entire narrative of my supposed mental breakdown, effectively defaming a senior director to a perceived multi-million-dollar client. Marcus turned his head slowly to look at me. The faint smirk was gone. His face was a mask of cold, corporate executioner fury. He didn't say a word. He just nodded once toward the door that connected our room to the boardroom. It was time. I reached out, grasped the heavy brass handle, and pushed the door open. The transition from the dimly lit observation room to the bright, sunlit boardroom was jarring, but I didn't blink. I walked into the room with the measured, predatory grace of a lioness stepping into a clearing. Chloe was mid-sentence, outlining a completely plagiarized logistical strategy, when the sound of the door opening made her freeze. She turned around. When she saw me, her face underwent a terrifying metamorphosis. The smug, confident smile shattered into a million pieces. The color completely drained from her face, leaving her a sickly, ashen gray. Her jaw went slack. For a long, agonizing second, her brain literally short-circuited as it tried to process the impossible reality of me standing there, wearing a power suit, looking perfectly sane, and terrifyingly lucid. "Elena," she stammered, her voice a reedy, pathetic squeak. What? What are you doing here? You're on leave. You're with the baby." "Hello, Chloe," I said, my voice ringing out clear and authoritative in the large room. I decided to cut my leave short. I was simply too eager to get back to work. Imagine my surprise when I arrived this morning and heard that I was having a mental collapse and quietly resigning to be a stay-at-home mother. That is fascinating news to me. I must have missed the memo. Chloe swallowed hard, her eyes darting frantically around the room. She looked at Julian, trying to maintain the facade. "Julian, I apologize for the interruption. This is highly unprofessional. Elena, please, we are in the middle of a multi-million-dollar pitch. You are embarrassing the firm." "I don't think she's the one embarrassing the firm, Chloe." A deep, gravelly voice echoed from the doorway. Marcus stepped out of the observation room and walked to the head of the table. The moment Chloe saw the CEO, whatever little fight she had left in her completely evaporated. She physically shrank in her expensive white suit. Marcus," she whispered, I can explain, I was just building rapport, I was." "You were systematically defaming a senior executive," Marcus interrupted, his voice deathly quiet, which was always when he was at his most dangerous. "You were lying to a prospective client. You were falsely claiming you were fast-tracked for a vice president role that you are not even remotely qualified for. You were violating nearly every clause of our corporate code of conduct." "No, Marcus, please, you have to understand. Elena has been." "Quiet," Marcus snapped, the word cracking like a whip. "I heard every word you said through the intercom, Chloe. I heard you use your own sister-in-law's recent childbirth as a weapon to steal her accomplishments. It is, without a doubt, the most repulsive display of corporate sabotage I have witnessed in my 30 years in this industry." Chloe's eyes filled with panicked tears. She looked at me, a desperate, silent plea for mercy. I stared back at her with the cold, unyielding deadness of a shark. I felt absolutely nothing for her. Marcus turned to Julian. "Sir, I apologize for this spectacular waste of your time. I assure you, this does not reflect the standards of Apex Global Innovations." Julian stood up, buttoning his suit jacket. He looked at Chloe, then at me, and offered a devastatingly charming smile. "Don't worry about it, Marcus. Actually, I should come clean. I don't run a venture capital firm. Ethelgard Holdings doesn't exist. my name is Julian. I'm a software developer from Seattle, and I'm a good friend of Alina's husband. The final nail in the coffin was driven home with the force of a sledgehammer. Chloe's legs seemed to give out. She slumped back into her chair, her mouth opening and closing like a suffocating fish. She realized, in that exact moment, the full, crushing weight of the trap she had walked into. She hadn't just been caught lying. She had been manipulated, outsmarted, and humiliated on a stage designed explicitly for her destruction. A setup? Chloe gasped, her voice trembling with a mixture of terror and a pathetic, rising anger. You set me up. You faked a client. Alina, you psychotic bitch. Language, Chloe, I said smoothly. And yes, I did, because unlike you, I don't operate in the shadows. If I am going to destroy someone's career, I prefer to do it with an audience. Marcus stepped forward, entirely uninterested in the family dynamics. Chloe, he said, his tone leaving absolutely zero room for negotiation. You are terminated, effective immediately, for gross misconduct, insubordination, and corporate sabotage. You will not return to your desk. Security will escort you to HR to sign your severance paperwork, which will be the absolute legal minimum. If you attempt to contact any Apex clients, or if you utter one more defamatory word about Alina, our legal department will bury you in litigation until you are bankrupt. Do you understand me? Chloe started sobbing, harsh, ugly, heaving sobs. She didn't say a word. She just grabbed her designer handbag and practically ran out of the boardroom, her heels echoing frantically down the hallway. The silence that followed her departure was heavy but intensely satisfying. Julian let out a low whistle. Well, that was certainly more entertaining than my usual Thursday morning stand-up meetings. You owe me a very expensive steak dinner, Alina. You've got it, Julian, I smiled, shaking his hand. Thank you, truly. Julian excused himself, leaving Marcus and me alone in the boardroom. Marcus walked over to the coffee carafe, poured himself a cup, and took a slow sip. He looked at me over the rim of the cup. You faked a multi-million-dollar lead, commandeered my morning schedule, and orchestrated a theatrical execution in my boardroom, he said, his voice flat. I protected my portfolio, eliminated a toxic liability from your firm, and proved my capacity for ruthless strategic planning. I countered, not breaking eye contact. A slow, genuine smile spread across Marcus's face. You did indeed. That was a phenomenally executed maneuver, Alina. It was completely unorthodox, borderline insane, and utterly effective. He set his coffee cup down. The VP of Operations is retiring in exactly 3 weeks. I was going to wait until your formal return to offer it to you. But seeing as you're already here, and dressed for the occasion, the office is yours if you want it. I felt a rush of absolute triumph flood my veins. I thought of Leo, safe at home. I thought of David. I thought of the countless hours I had poured into this company. I had walked through the fire, and I had come out wearing the crown. I accept Marcus, I said, and I promise you, operations at this firm will run smoother and more efficiently than ever before. I don't doubt it for a second, he replied. Now go home, finish your maternity leave, spend time with your boy. The real work begins in 2 weeks. I left the office that day walking on air. The drive home was a blur of vindicated joy. When I walked through the front door, David was holding Leo, pacing the living room. He looked up, his eyes wide with anticipation. Well, he asked. I dropped my keys in the bowl, kicked off my heels, and took my son from his arms. I buried my face in Leo's soft hair, inhaling the sweet, perfect scent of him. Chloe is currently cleaning out her desk under the supervision of 2 armed security guards, I said, a massive grin spreading across my face. And you are currently looking at the new Vice President of Operations for Apex Global Innovations. David let out a whoop of joy, wrapping his arms around both me and the baby. We celebrated that night with cheap takeout and expensive champagne. The aftermath of Chloe's termination was as messy as you would expect. She went crying to Mark, twisting the story, claiming I had sabotaged her out of pure jealousy and bullied her out of the company. Mark, bless his loyal but naive heart, called David, furious, demanding an apology. David didn't yell. He didn't argue. He simply forwarded Mark a file containing screenshots of the emails Chloe had sent to my clients, the ones where she explicitly lied about my mental health and claimed she was taking my job. Read